Hi guys, and welcome to my John Deere 322 snowplowing video for 2022. This is a cold start. The day I filmed this video was minus 15 degrees Celsius outside. This tractor has never failed to start in the cold, but it's always been very particular about how you start it, and it has to do with the choke. There is a lot that I have to say in this video about the choke. Basically, what you have to do to start it is get the choke fully closed, then you crank it over, and pretty much as soon as it starts firing, you open the choke slightly, or else it'll flood itself and just not run. But if you open the choke slightly, it will run, and that's exactly what you need in order to get this thing started. So when you do get it started, you kind of have to keep the choke about half on, which is what I've been doing here, and slowly take it in just a bit more as the tractor warms up. So a little bit about this John Deere. This is the first winter where I've had the blade on this tractor in earnest. The blade I bought in 2018, and then in 2019, for the winter of 2019-2020, this became my only snow clearing tractor. But it snowed so much that winter that I basically threw my 47-inch dual-stage snowblower on there and called it a day. And every snow we would get, it just came down like gangbusters. And so there was always a good excuse for a snowblower. That winter was especially fun as well, because that was the winter where I finally ponied up for about $500 worth of tires and fluid fill with rim guard. And no regrets there. I put these massive honking industrial tread 26-inch tires on old Cub Cadet rims, which had a really aggressive offset on them, and turned this tractor into a beast. 6 suitcase weights on the back, and it was finally fun using it. You can see several videos from the 2019-2020 winter period of me just conquering the snow with that thing and the 47-inch dual stage. It was really amazing. This winter, I'm using the blade, and I bought the blade in 2018. I think I might have mentioned that. Just never really bothered with it, because last winter, which was 2020 to 2021, I was using a Case 448 tractor with the blade on it, and it wasn't a bad blade tractor. It had a hydraulic leak at the time from the hose that went to the lift cylinder, but I didn't know that it only leaked when it lifted, and it lifted a lot. So my parents would say, "Oh gee, Roy, you're like, what tractor are you using? It's got hydraulic oil everywhere on the driveway. It's just pissing." And I'm like, "Oh guys, you're exaggerating." But it was just pissing. And that tractor was not a great blade tractor. It just didn't have the weight behind it. About the only advantage that it had was that it went as fast and forward as it did in reverse. Now I'm reaping the benefits of this John Deere, and even though it's nothing compared to the quick attach blades that I've used on 400 series before, it's still great. It's a two-way blade, so you'll see me jump off the tractor a few times and angle it a different way, and it sucks that I can't have a four-way angle on it, but at one point I actually went to the expense of getting the four-way angle and a cylinder and the mounting kit and everything. I spent like $400 with shipping and everything. And the problem is, on these 300 series blades, the angle cylinder is mounted in such a way that it just can't take the torque. And so less than one season, and all of a sudden I couldn't keep the angle straight and give the blade a good push against any substance, whether it was dirt or snow. And the cylinder started leaking. It was just a really awful experience, really regrettable $400 spend right there. So back to a two-way blade, and you know what? Once you kind of learn how to work the tractor around a two-way angle, having a four-way is nice, but it's just not the end of the world for the expense that you have to go to. Now what you're watching here is me stalling the tractor multiple times, and this goes back to what I was saying earlier about the choke. When the ambient air is cold, or when the engine's not quite warmed up enough yet, I think for some reason I suspect the oil needs to get warm, not just the coolant. The engine just needs a bit more choke to respond to sudden changes in load. And this happens a lot when you're trying to tow things or push things, where that sudden change in load is not as manageable. So what happens is the engine will stall and start to hesitate, like for lack of fuel, and then you'll hear it come back, and the RPMs will increase, and there'll be more power. And I've driven a few different 322s over the years. This one definitely exhibits the worst of those symptoms, but thankfully it's just a manageable problem. I have my suspicions as to why. First of all, it probably has something to do with a slightly undersensitive governor design, because I suspect, when the engine's warm and the oil's warm, this problem just gets, it goes away almost completely when you have a tractor that's been fully brought up to operating temperature. And you'll see, even as I'm kind of cleaning up the end of the driveway here, it starts hesitating again. And yeah, the remedy for this, which I wasn't doing because I was just a little stubborn and I wanted to see if it would go away on its own, even though I've driven this tractor for hundreds of hours and I kind of know that isn't the case. The remedy is to basically just pull the choke out ever so slightly, like so slightly that you think it wouldn't even make a difference, but just that little bit of a richer mixture solves the problem. I've already eliminated carburetor clogging from the picture, because I did end up taking the carburetor completely apart and letting it sit for several days in methyl ethyl ketone lacquer thinner. Really strong substance, certainly stronger than most off-the-shelf carburetor cleaners, and just to make sure that any kind of scale or dirt or rust that's left over in the carburetor, in spite of the fact that I've been using it for long, was actually gone out of the equation. So yeah, it's not a dirty carburetor issue. It's just, I think, more than anything, a lack of an accelerator pump on that carburetor from the factory, exacerbated by a lazy governor. Eventually, I think I got a bit of a brain and pulled out the choke. And the thing is, if you can kind of get it up to speed while responding to load, it'll do just fine. You can see here it's just powering through this thicker drift at the side of the driveway. You can really hear a change in the engine tone when it comes under load that way. And it's just that initial part, that initial response to the load. That's probably my biggest complaint about this tractor. I've always been sentimental about this 322, and that's just because it was a real landmark for me. It was the first time I remember the deal that I made for it. It was a relative of my family's farrier, and he had one of his farm hands just mention it to me, and so I went to look at it, and the owner wasn't there at the time when I went to his farm, and so I started it up, and I didn't know there was no coolant in the line, so it overheated in like, oh man, less than a minute. And I saw the temperature light come on, shut it right off at that point. And so I was kind of looking at this thing, and it had a mower and a rototiller, and it was just barely running and really beat up. And so I was looking at it like, some of these issues might be expensive to fix, whatever. But I was 19 at the time. Oh no, I wasn't even 19. I was just about 18 3/4, just real young. And so the owner wasn't home, and I said, well, okay, let me talk to him, because he wants 1,800 Canadian dollars for this machine. Keep in mind that Canadian John Deere prices are much, much higher than they are in the States for used stuff, and I imagine for new. And I would reckon at the time that, let's say this tractor was in mint working condition, it would probably be at least a $3,000 tractor, if not $3,500. So this one broken. Starting price for negotiation was $1,800, and the owner was away, so I had to phone him and get my offer to him, and it was kind of being mediated through the third party, this farmhand, and so I countered 800 instead of 1800, and we arrived at 1,000, and the guy, the farmhand, he turned away from the phone, and he said, hey, he wants at least 1,000 for it, and he was about to hang up the phone. He's like, yeah, sorry, Rory, he wants 1,000, and he was just about to hang up the phone. I said, I'll take it, $1,000, and so he mumbles into the phone, hangs it up, and he's like, it's yours. And I just remember throwing my hands up in the air, doing this yes kind of thing, and I got the tractor and brought it home with me, and it was a really proud day because I just knew it was something special. I even during the days when I was more active on the tractor forum, I'd see the odd photo or video of a 322, and I always thought, like, what a special thing. There's only a couple of garden tractors. It was this, and I think the Cub Cadet 1782 or 2182. That was it. Those were the only tractors that I know of that ever came with 3-cylinder inline gasoline engines from the factory. So I knew it was something special, and I didn't know what it was the start of, because after this I just kept getting more and more and more John Deere stuff, and it was bigger and better and more capable, and I was able to get a snowblower for that tractor and a rototiller and a mower, and you guys will be able to see videos of this thing on my channel going back all that time. I did everything with this tractor. I just used the hell out of it, and it's been so good to me. Apart from a problem I had, which is another story I can get into, where I thought I had to replace all 3 ignition modules because it fixed my problem, but in reality, and this is a good warning, let's say you have a John Deere that loses spark, and if any of my close friends are watching this video, they'll already know where I'm going with this. So you have a John Deere, and it stops firing in one cylinder, and you can't for the life of you figure out why, and it looks like the spark plug's firing, maybe the spark plug's brand new, there's power to the coil, but you can't get it to run in this cylinder, and you're taking the spark plugs out, you're grounding them against the block, and you can actually see them sparking, brand new spark plugs, but it still will not run on 1 or maybe 2 cylinders. And there's a fix to this, and it's a really insidious thing that happens. I caught wind of it because I was about to walk in and buy a $300 ignition module for my John Deere 425 back in 2018, and I had a parts technician go, no, you probably don't need that because you should try this first. And as it turns out, if you look at the original owner's manual or an original like paperback service manual for all these old 90s John Deeres, 20 to 30 years old, maybe newer, they will tell you that you need an NGK 4 spark plug. You look at the NGK spark plug codes, whether it's BMR or BPA or whatever, and there is a number in there, and it's usually near the end, and that number is a 4 or 5 or 6 usually. What that number is the heat range for the spark plug. It's how hot or cold the spark is, and the bigger the number, the colder the spark. So originally, John Deere recommended 4 heat range spark plugs for their tractors. At some point, someone arbitrarily changed the specification. So if you look up on any online database, if you download a modern revision of any service manual for these older tractors, it will cross to a 5 or a 6 heat range spark plug. And if you look at the original manual for any of these tractors, it'll be the exact same spark plug, but it'll be a 4 in the spark plug, which means a hotter spark. So at the beginning of the season, actually almost yearly I've had to replace the spark plugs in this John Deere because it's always started firing on 2 cylinders. I'm like, oh crap, I guess I better replace all 3 spark plugs because that's the only thing that works. So I've been dealing with this problem for years and just assuming that it's probably something crappy with the engine, this particular John Deere, whatever. But I also had to deal with that other John Deere, that 425 of mine that lost spark in 1 cylinder, and for some reason it took me a couple more years to connect the dots after struggling with this thing. And here's the thing, I looked in the original owner's manual, which I had, and lo and behold, it lists a 4 heat range spark plug, and I've been buying 5 spark plugs, because that's 5 heat range spark plugs, because that's what it crosses over to online the whole damn time. So I haven't been able to get this thing running to save my life. It's 9 o'clock in the evening. I run to our local hardware store, a kind of general supply store. It's called Canadian Tire in Canada. So I run to Can Tire, and I pick out the last 4 heat range spark plugs. There was 3 of them exactly on the shelf, and I'm out there in like minus 25 degrees Celsius, changing out the spark plugs on this thing in the cold. The socket wrench is burning my hand as I'm turning it, and lo and behold, that's what fixes the issue. So I really hope that for those of you who actually made it far enough in the video and watched this, if you have spark plug issues like that on your John Deeres, please see that first. See if you can find an original owner's manual or like a PDF scan of the older literature, because I've encountered this as well on other parts of the John Deere service literature, where they will recommend a certain fluid for a tractor because they've determined somehow that it's backwards compatible. I'm sure they have smart people that do this, but I just can't fathom why. And I'll give you another example. John Deere F725. I also have the original owner's manual for one of those. The service literature, modern day, says that, and any John Deere parts technician who reads the book and hasn't been working there for 30 years, which is a lot to ask for someone to know better about stuff like this, is, you know, they will tell you to put low viscosity high guard in the John Deere F725 transmission, which is a pretty proprietary kind of tough torque unit. And the reality is that the original owner's manual recommends 0W40 synthetic, which is just incredibly strange. But 0W40 synthetic engine oil is a bit different than low visibility high guard. You couldn't put low visibility John Deere low visibility. Have I been saying that the whole time? Low viscosity. You couldn't put low viscosity John Deere high guard in a engine. So there's got to be some differences to the oil, and I can't really fathom why you'd want to do anything other than to stick with the original spec in circumstances like this, because I've obviously been burned with spark plugs not sticking with the original spec there. So just a word of caution for all of you aspiring backyard John Deere mechanics out there, that stuff like that can happen that way. So anyway, the video is about to come to an end. I didn't get much mileage out of plowing with this thing on the grass. It helps to have the trip springs locked, but problem is there's so much weight on the back there that you can see when the blade's angled like this and you hit a ground or a real obstruction, it throws the front of the tractor around. I ought to have some chains, either regular tire chains or bike chain, to fix that issue, but I just haven't got around to it yet. Anyway, video is coming to an end. I'm about to park the tractor here and turn it off and get off, so I hope you enjoyed, and I think I'll be filming a bit more this winter. All I had to do was get out there and turn the camera on and do it. Thanks for watching.